And this is especially difficult in a world in which we are told, whispered into our ears, that actually the world doesn't have any meaning.
Right.
The world is the world. It's just a composition of material components and neutrons and protons and chemicals and energy and matter and all of that. There is no transcendent meaning. It's just a world out there. Just take it as it is.
Mr. Ibrahim Kalın, it's an honor to have you with us. I'm a big fan of yours. I've been following all your works. You're an intellectual, you're a philosopher, you're an academic, you're in the highest office in your country. You're doing so many great things. And you're a really great musician. You're a brilliant musician. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for this very kind words, which I don't deserve. That's a reflection of the beauty of your soul. Thank you. And I've been a big fan of your work. What doing through your music has been really remarkable. It's more than music. It's really a journey along which you have taken so many of us and have shown us beautiful places and light in times of darkness and hope in times of despair. So thank you.
I want to ask you the $1 million question. How is it possible to do all these things? I mean, brilliant in so many different areas, but still grounded in the modern world, in light of all the clutter and sound and noise, is a better word, that we hear in the world and all the problems of the world. How do you stay grounded? How do you find that balance?
Well, as I was growing up as a child, I always thought that I have to be grounded in something in order to do something. If I'm going to travel, I have to start somewhere, and I have to have a destination, a sense of direction, whether, you go to the grocery to buy something, or you set out on a journey to get, knowledge and scholarship and become a professor or a professional in any field. You have to have a goal in mind. You have to have some idea, the purpose for which you are doing all this. And this really brought me back to our traditional concept of wisdom or hikmah. Mm-hmm. And when I studied the Muslim philosophers and thinkers and theologians and Sufis, I've come to the conclusion that wisdom is really what should be guiding our actions, our thoughts, our feelings, our minds, our hearts. Because wisdom is the purpose for which we do anything, whether you are a physicist or a doctor or a politician or a scholar or a poet, you have to have an explanation for what you're doing. And that's part of our quest for meaning, because we are beings driven by a quest or search for meaning. We cannot do anything without meaning.
Right.
The nihilists have claimed in the modern world that, no, actually, there is no meaning, and we just have to live with it. But deep down, we all know that, yes, there is a question of how to bring out that meaning, realize it in your life, make it available to others. Yes, that's a big question, but we cannot live without meaning. We know that meaninglessness cannot be an answer to our quest for meaning. Even logically, of course, you can say meaninglessness itself is a response or is the meaning. But, it's self-contradictory. It's not really logical. And so I've tried to, make a sense of what I'm doing. And all that brought me to a kind of a multidimensional understanding of reality. My reading of my own existence in this world and everything else, from politics to music, from academia to social issues and other things, gave me the insight into the fact that reality itself is multi-layered. Therefore, my response to it needs to be multi-layered too, meaning that if I cannot reduce reality to one single component of it, which I cannot logically, because the world is so rich, reality is so multifaceted, I have to have the intellectual, spiritual, artistic abilities, capabilities, capacities to respond to different aspects of reality. Because to be honest with you, we are lost in this world of noise and overspeeding and overdoing everything.
Yes.
And we always need a time for self-reflection. We need to pause a little bit.
How do you do that?
It's hard because the world passes by you. It's moving too fast. But as Tolstoy once said, if you're running in a beautiful garden, you cannot see any of the flowers. You just have to slow down. Sometimes just stop before a rose or a tulip or lily or something to witness the beauty of that flower. If you're just passing through and running and rushing, etc., you're not in a garden. You miss out on so much. You just have to slow down a little bit. But you do it in a way that you don't obviously neglect your duties. You don't fall behind. Therefore, you concentrate on what is important. You have to have priorities. You can spend all your time, your days on secondary stuff and on all kinds of things that distract you from the real issue. But if you have a sense of direction, a meaning, a purpose for which you're doing all this, I think it's possible that you manage your time better. And actually, God gives you blessings and actually increases your time. At your 24-hour suddenly becomes, much more than just miracle 24-hour. And there are moments, I'm sure you have all experienced, or you have experienced this, we all experience. There are moments where you feel like, just a moment, 10 minutes or 1 hour is worth days of work or conversation because it's so concentrated, it is so deep and substantial. And I always felt like temporal time in which we live as finite human beings is a drop from eternity. You're always connected to eternity. You don't realize it. But there are moments in reflection, in contemplation, in music, in spirituality, in prayer, or in the face of a major event, a loss, a trauma or something, where you feel like you're touching eternity. You're connected with that eternal moment in a moment of extreme love and affection. Your love for your child, your love for your wife or husband or your parents, etc. You feel that moment also, that you're connected to that moment of eternity. And all these things, bring in and infuse more barakah, into your time. It becomes a self-motivating that, you try to make sense of what you do. You try to infuse your actions with meaning. You want to do something for which you can provide an explanation. I'm doing this because I have a good reason to do it.
Right.
And this is especially difficult in a world in which we are told, whispered into our ears, that actually the world doesn't have any meaning.
Right.
The world is the world. It's just a composition of material components and neutrons and protons and chemicals and energy and matter and all of that. There is no transcendent meaning. It's just a world out there. Just take it as it is. But we know deep down, we are more than that. As human beings, we search for that meaning. And wisdom provides a venue, for us to figure out how to reach that meaning and realize it in our lives. And in our tradition, again, which I believe was the tradition of the West for a long time too.
Yes.
You have the unity of what is true, what is good, and what's beautiful. That is logic, ethics, and aesthetics. They were one unified reality. They were never separated from one another. If something is good, then it is true. It is based on truth. And if it is something good and true, it must be beautiful too. And if it is something beautiful, well, it must be based on truth and goodness. Now, of course, we have a very different set of priorities, a very different value system, where what is good, what is true, is measured by, say, profit, productivity, efficiency, quantitative numbers, bigger is better.
Yes.
Numbers, statistics. We've lost the quality in our lives, and the quality of life has left us. Now that's why, the educationists are talking about, well, you have to spend quality time with your children. It's like if, the rest of the time you spend with them is without quality, and they get poisoned and they become toxic with all these images and messages and all of that, and then you spend quality time to clear that up. It's too late. You cannot compete with the speed of the modern world, social media, and instant gratification moments, pleasures, and all of that. You cannot compete with any of that. You just have to bring that quality as a mode of life, into your time and space. Otherwise, spending so-called quality time, say, even if you can do it for 1 hour or so a day, which I doubt many people can do, given their busy schedules, etc., you lose everything. Therefore, wisdom, hikmah, in our traditional sense of the term, reminds us that, no, what you do must be based on truth, that it must be true logically, it must be based on goodness, it must be good ethically, not evil, it must be based on virtue, and then it must reflect, the beautiful aspect of existence. Aesthetically, you have to surround yourself with beautiful things so that your mind and your heart can function in harmony. And beauty is never a luxury. Today, in the modern world, beauty has become something you buy and sell.
That's right.
As commercialized. As it is something expensive. Only rich people can have beautiful things, say beautiful objects or houses. That's so wrong. Beauty in the traditional sense was never, first of all, a commercial product. A mosque was built or a carpet was woven for the sake of its sacred meaning and beauty, not for selling or turning it into something commercial. Of course, someone had to sponsor it, pay for it, no doubt. It had its own, market logic, but it was never an object in and of itself for sale, right? Calligraphy, music, and all these things were meant to add quality to our lives, help us in our search for meaning.
Right.
So when you listen to music, when I listen to your music, for example, or the music of, great Western composers like Bach and Vivaldi, and even before them like Corelli and Telemann and many others, or other great musicians from the Muslim world, Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan or Kulthum, or, many, many others, or from our folk tradition like Neshat Ertaş, Ashik Veysel, and many other great composers and musicians. What I see in their music is that, well, they're all on a journey. They're showing us the path that they traveled and inviting us. That if you like, this is what I have. You can come and join me. And, you can look at different experiences in that journey. So all this, gives you a sense of unity. You try to look at things from a more unitary point of view. Therefore, whether, as I said, in my case, for example, yes, I serve as an official in the government. I write books. I try to play music and try to explain what I do to people.
You do more than try to play music. You do more than try to play music.
Yeah, thank you. That's very kind of you. I'm hearing this from you is very kind. Thank you. So all this, makes sense when they are together. When I separate them, compartmentalize them, they lose their integrity. But we all want to live a life with integrity, intellectually, but also in terms of our heart and feelings.
You've said so many things. Each thing is opening a new door. You got philosophical, which is lovely. I'm a student in this area. You're a ustad. You're a accomplished teacher. You talked about different realities. It reminded me of a quote by one of our sages: "That which is lacking in the present world is a profound knowledge of the nature of things." What is reality in itself? And as you said, the different layers of reality.
Well, it's a very good fundamental question. Reductionism is one of the philosophical diseases of the modern world. We tend to reduce things to one component of a huge system, thinking that it will help us control it, not explain it scientifically. It's a function of control. Because if you keep it simple, then you can control it, you can manipulate it. That's been the driving force behind many of the reductionist scientific ideas, unfortunately, in the modern world, because, modern capitalism is driven by the idea of control.
Right.
If I can control you, I can define you, then I can sell you more products.
Right.
That's the bottom line. I mean, it sounds very gross, but believe me, at the end of the day, that's the logic behind it. Because, you know, all these statistical studies and psychological studies on social media, behavioral patterns, and all these trends and all these things, they are studied in order to figure out what you like, and also the ways in which I can influence your taste, your preference, so that at the end of the day, I can sell you more products, right? I want to sell you more. Unfortunately, that's modern capitalism. And so control becomes a function of capitalism. And science, knowledge, investigation, all this becomes a function of finding different ways of controlling you and the customer. And in fact, suddenly human beings become customers. We are no longer human beings carrying the light of the divine within our souls, but we are just customers, right? We are either customers or potential customers. Only two kinds of people exist out there for capitalism. Now, the control issue is related to simplicity. If I can keep it simple, that is, reduce all this complexity to one or two components, then I can control, by pushing one button, and that's it. I mean, remember what happened in Truman Show, right? The way, his life was set up, that, he was controlled in so many different ways, his life, and he didn't know that he was set up. He was part of the setup, that he was living a life of a lie, a life of a constructed being, constructed only for the sake of TV, so that they can sell products. And, there will be a moment when, they will show a product. His wife comes to him and says, I want to cook you this macaroni today, but it's actually a commercial. Yeah. It is so inhuman. Now, this was Truman Show, shot, I think, some 30 years ago. Today, strangely enough, everybody wants to be part of the Truman Show with social media. I want to share everything, every picture. I want to put it out there. I want people to like it. And I want to live another life on social media, on virtual reality, etc. I mean, it's terrifying when you think about it. What happened to your privacy? What happened to your own self? What happened to your own identity? I mean, you're just redesigning yourself every single day according to the most current fashion and trend and all that stuff. You're no longer yourself. But modern capitalism actually provides the means to make it happen so that I can control. The point is, reality is much more complex than to be reduced to one of its components. As our Muslim philosophers and many others like Heidegger in the Western tradition have said, existence, al-wujud in the philosophical sense of the term, is more than the total sum and collection of individual existence. That is, I am more than a collection of my organs. I'm more than my hands, my feet, my eyes. Yes, they're part of me. They are me. But when they come together, I am more than my organs, right? So you cannot reduce me to my hand or eye or ear.
Yes.
Right? I am a whole when each is distributed equally. So if that's the reality, that's the nature of reality, then I have to understand the reality at different levels. At the material level, yes, there are tools that I have to understand the physical things.
Yes.
I move thing. I have this glass here. So, I mean, that's how I respond to it. At the level of ideas, then I use my mind, and that's how I respond to that reality. At the level of imagination, the world of imagination, Alam al-Khayal, for example. This is, in fact, an experience of Alam al-Khayal, in a sense. I mean, you are there, you are on a screen, I am on a screen. We are real, but not real. We are kind of traveling between different levels of reality. So I respond to it through my imagination. Poetry, music, religion, metaphysics, a novel, all these things respond to a particular aspect of reality. If I reduce all this complexity to one single element, I miss out on this incredibly rich nature of reality. I think this is one of the things that we are forgetting in this modern world. And we are forgetting the fact that simplicity is not reductionism. You can be very simple.
Fascinating.
with incredible complexity behind it. Because as they say, simplicity is the ultimate complexity. You know, you want to do it in a simple way without reducing it to a single component or element. It's like, for example, your music, right? I mean, you sing something, you carry a feeling, a sentiment, an idea, you know, in that song, and it's a little journey. You're inviting us to join you there, and sometimes musicians also feel this, like the best moment you reach is the simplest moment in a musical tune. It's not this very complex, you know, type of thing, but rather, you know, very simple sound, which actually, in my view, is a reflection of the celestial sounds. You just bring them down here, or they kind of let themselves to come down here.
Wow.
You connect with the eternal sound. And that's how I, you know, when I hear great musicians, great composers, I feel like they just went up to the heaven, brought this down, and wrote it on a piece of paper and played it. It sounds so uplifting, so spiritual, so deep. So this cannot be reduced to simply some physical, chemical actions or reactions in my brain. It will be insulting the human dignity to claim that this is all about these chemical things happening, you know, in my mind. Why are they happening in this way and not in another way, right?
You talked about so many things again. Each one of those allusions open new doors for questions. I don't know if we have time to talk about this, but could you maybe talk about why, especially in the West, why this desacralization process took place, and why the trajectory was somewhat different in other traditions, say in the Islamic tradition or the Hindu civilization or other civilizations, traditions? I'd love to know about that, and then I'd love to talk about music.
Yeah, well, very briefly, the rise of modernity had everything to do with the failures of Christian theology and traditional Christianity in the West. When the Christian churches stopped providing convincing answers, that is, when they lost their wisdom to explain why things were happening in that way, you know, other venues open up, and enlightenment, you know, became the dominant ideological trend and the philosophical outlook for the West, for Europe first, and then spread to the rest of the world. That's a long history, of course. You know, I don't want to, you know, get us lost in that history, but it is an important part of our story, because we've become influenced by it, and our minds have been shaped, you know, by all these grand generalizations. Even the words, I mean, terminology we use, you know, they call everything medieval dark ages.
That's right.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that dark, first of all. Yes, there were dark moments, but there are dark moments in our modern history too. I mean, genocides, the Holocaust, 2 world wars, chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction, and all of that. Well, these are very dark realities, but we don't call this age, you know, dark age. We call it information age. We call it now with many other names. But the reality is that when a great tradition stops asking the right questions, it begins to die. This is true for all traditions. Same happened in the Islamic tradition. For some time, members of the Islamic tradition, scholars, luminaries, intellectuals, intelligentsia, and others, stop asking the right questions. They either stop asking questions, saying that we don't need this will take us too far afield, we're going to lose our faith, etc. You cannot stop human thinking in the name of protecting the faith, because if you do that, faith becomes devoid of content, and you lose it loses its persuasiveness. And if you lose it,
and sentimental, it becomes sentimental.
It becomes purely sentimental. Yes, I believe because I love my family. I believe because, you know, I love our mosque. But when you are challenged on an intellectual basis, why you are believing in this tradition, why you are believing in God, why you are believing in the hereafter, and you don't have good convincing answers, then faith becomes sentimentalized. Yes. And that's a big danger for faith. because once you take away that sentimental element and put something else in it, that's it. It's gone forever.
Right.
You cannot recover from that. So you have to keep the intellectual principle strong. Unfortunately, the Christian tradition in the 17th, 18th centuries lost that. They were not able to provide new answers. And another, path was open in a sense in the West, enlightenment and the rest. So when you stop asking questions, that's a big danger for any tradition. And then when you start asking the wrong questions, that's another problem. You get lost. You have to find, what the right questions are. You cannot avoid them, so that you keep the tradition alive and moving. Tradition doesn't mean that you mummify the past. Tradition doesn't mean that you simply have a nostalgic idea about what happened in the past. Tradition means that something very precious has been given to you, and now you're asked to do something with it.
Right.
And if you don't know what to do with it, you are basically betraying your tradition. You're not giving its due. If you take that tradition, bring it today, revive it, revise it, energize it, vivify it, and then add something to it, and then you're part of a living tradition. Otherwise, tradition becomes just history. What you need is not history. What you need is a living tradition on which you can shape your present and future. It's only through that interactive and dynamic approach or a relationship with tradition that we can benefit from the great luminaries of the Islamic tradition. Yes, Imam Ghazali is extremely important. From Al-Farabi to Mullah Sadra, they are extremely important. From Ziryab, right, in Andalusia, the great musician, to Mimar Sinan, the architect. But you just don't want to simply admire their work. You want to learn from them. You want to engage them. I want to ask questions to Al-Ghazali and Farabi, and I want to get answers. But then I have to ask the questions of the today, of the present day, and come up with answers that will make sense in that long tradition of thinking through reason and through our hearts.
My question now is really about music. I love the way you play Bağlama. I love your Bağlama playing. The last piece I heard from you was the Ashik Veysel piece, actually.
Sure, yeah.
Lovely. And I did some research on him as well as fascinating. I was ignorant about his life. Your voice is really unique. Really unique. Because it has this beautiful warmth in the low mids and mid range, and I don't know, I love it. I really love your voice. I think you should do more music.
Thank
you should
you.
release more content. Do you have an album?
Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks again for this very kind words, especially coming from you.
That's the truth.
Thank you so much. And through your music, you've put us in so many different beautiful states of reflection and beauty and compassion. Thank you
so much.
Thank you for doing this, because your music has reached beyond the Muslim world. I mean, it has become a global voice, and you've accomplished so much, with your music. In a sense, this is in tune with the spirit of music. The word music comes from muse, as you know, and the muse is what brings inspiration. And once you have that notion of inspiration, meaning that you are simply not the master of what you're doing. You're giving something, and you're sharing it with others. So it makes you humble. Actually, you can never, if you are a true musician or master of anything, you can never be arrogant, because you know that your talent is given to you. Your task is to use it in the most effective way, and do it in a humble way, so that it is graced, it is augmented spiritually, and when you share it, it doesn't become less, it becomes more, because it's always almost like contagious, right? It spreads from one place to another.
Wow.
So with music, I always felt like it opens up so much in my mind, in my soul, that I begin to understand better the the meaning of the ineffable. There are moments where you reach the point of the ineffable. There are things for which there are no words enough to express what you have in your mind, in your soul, in your heart. And you reach that point of the ineffable where you begin to say the most beautiful things. You have to really go to that limit beyond words so that you can start having a conversation in silence. Sometimes the most beautiful conversations happen in silence without words. You are in the company of your friends, your companions, and you just keep silent. And that's the most beautiful conversation. And you never ask, why are we keeping silent? Something happened, something wrong? You never ask that question. To the contrary, you enjoy the silence together. Wow. Because that's where the ineffable penetrates our minds and our souls and opens up so much. You say so much by not saying. Music is the most important venue, for me at least, to express those feelings and ideas and states without saying a word. You just hit the note, say something, and kind of it draws you inside, and you begin to concentrate on that moment. And then there is the beauty of performing it, because especially with other musicians, when you play with others, the synchrony, the harmony that comes out of that joint work is so beautiful. You're yourself. You're always yourself. As a singer, as a composer, or as an instrumentalist, you're yourself, but also you're with others. You don't lose your individuality. You play with others. In fact, they bring out the best in you, especially if you're playing with good musicians. They invite you, they stimulate you, they tempt you sometimes, can you do this? You do this in the middle of the music, right? It's all improvised. You don't, of course you practice, but, there are moments where you feel like when you're part of an orchestra or group, an ensemble, for example, you have this perfect combination of the collective and the individual. You're part of something larger than you without losing yourself. And when you play with other musicians, you feel like, well, can I live my life like this? Not just playing this music, but I'm part of a larger reality, my community, my family, my friends, my university, my country, then humanity at large. And I have that sense of flow, with others, without losing my individuality, my personality, but without becoming arrogant either, because I know, my talent becomes more valuable when I am joined by others. So, I mean, these are the things that, kind of inspire me when I do my music and listen to music, play music, and convey this sense of the ineffable through music, which I believe, as I said, says so much than any word you may choose.
You still haven't explained how you do all of that, though. How do you find the time to do all of this? To release music and singles and I mean, anybody who's familiar with your work and life knows that you're prolific. You're very, very busy. You do a lot of things. How do we get some of that barakah?
In time, you learn how to do things on the go. When I was at the university, I was teaching as a professor there. I had my own time, and I could schedule my things and spend hours in my office, library, and right now I don't have that luxury now. So I realized that when I travel, when I go to places, official meetings, and other things, there are times I can work on the plane, at the hotel, and this and here and there. So I developed this, habit of doing things on the go. If I'm writing something, I always have stuff with me, my books and my notes and my computer and things like that. I cannot carry my saz, my musical instrument, everywhere, but, it's always here and here. So it's in my mind, in my heart. So kind of I always play it, even from afar, symbolically or spiritually, so to speak. So, I mean, you learn how to do these things, in time. I think, and also spending less time on less important things.
Right.
I know, spending less time on social media, on TV, and things like that. I'm not saying that don't do any of this. Of course, we cannot avoid them, no doubt. But do it in a reasonable way. Do it to the extent to which it is really necessary for you, for your life, and then concentrate on what is important, what is really enduring, because we all want to attach ourselves to something that is enduring, not something flimsy, not something that will be passé in the next 5 minutes or in the next 2 days.
Yeah.
You want to remain anchored in something that will give you a sense of continuity, endurance, a sense of fulfillment. Otherwise, there is no end to this instant moments of gratification, physical or sexual pleasures and things like that. There is no end to that, but there is no deep spiritual satisfaction in them either. There is no answer to our deep search for meaning in any of this. We have to go above them, beyond them, get a sense of contentment and fulfillment.
Thank you so much, Professor Kalın, for gracing us and honoring us in reflections. Given that we're in the pandemic, we're living these very unprecedented times, it would be lovely to hear a few reflective words, if possible.
Yeah, the COVID-19 has turned out to be a major test for all of us, for the world system, for the global order or disorder, if you like, for all the countries, has shown that there are no hierarchies when it comes to such major catastrophes. Rich and poor, big and small, Eastern and Western, US or the Middle East or Europe or Asia, doesn't matter. I think this invisible virus, the virus that we cannot see with naked eye, has brought the entire world system to its knees, and the whole world system has tested positive. So we have to really take action to learn some lessons from this. It was good that we began self-isolation, social distance, and masks, and etc. But what's more important is to show the ability to move from self-isolation to self-reflection, from self-quarantine to quarantining ourselves from all that is evil, that is base, that is gross. If we can develop those, and I think we've learned through this process that we can live with less, materially speaking. Right. Less is better. As Schumacher said many, many years ago, small is beautiful. And I think we again remember that small is possible, is beautiful, is more meaningful, and it doesn't have to take a global pandemic, a disaster like this, for us to remember that, in fact, as human beings, we can live by being less dependent on what is lower than us, that is material things. Let's depend on something that is higher than us rather than lower than us, that will pull us down. So I think these are good moments of reflection for all of us in terms of the overall purpose and meaning of our lives. And we've been given so many blessings. The fact that we breathe, the fact that we are able to speak, the fact that we are able to see, the fact that we are able to hear. It's time to understand how precious these are, to be able to see the sunlight, to be able to hear the songs of the birds, to be able to touch, a fruit that you're going to eat, to be able to taste a cherry or apple, and appreciate how precious and important they are, and never take them for granted.